85.
85. What I would like, Mary, is for you to remember as much as you can, as far back as you can, in terms of your musical life here in Portland. So could you start at the very beginning?
Well, the very beginning, I made my debut in Oakland, California at the Orpheum Theater at the age of 6. And that was in the good old vaudeville days. And I never will forget, I sang "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles" with a big pink bow in my hair and a big pink bow on my sash and my dress. So that was the beginning.
And that would have been about what year?
About 23, something like that. I don't know that my arithmetic is that good. But anyway, I did what children do. And of course, when you're a child performer, it doesn't really matter what you do. Everybody loves to see a child perform. You're a big success whether you are or not. Just the fact that you're young and doing it, you know. And of course, all the grown people on the show, they treat you so wonderful, you know. You think you are wonderful. And I enjoyed my childhood. I really did.
So was your family from Oakland?
No, family's born everywhere because we were show business people. And so I was actually born in San Francisco. Then I had a brother that was born in Oakland. I had a brother that was born in Germany. So that just gives you some idea. Well, if you're on the circuit, the vaudeville circuit, you do a lot of traveling. That's what you have to do to work.
So your parents were in vaudeville?
Yes. And like I say, I enjoyed it. I went to different schools, that was an education all by itself, because you meet different people and the children are different and the teachers are different. But I never seemed to have too much difficulty getting along with people, you know, and the other kids. So my family, my mother brought me up here when I was 10 months old. But we still were traveling from place to place. But my grandparents lived here. And my grandfather came here in 1880.
Really?
With the Buffalo Soldiers.
Really?
And so...
and settled in Portland.
Well, he was in Vancouver, of course, because he was at Fort Vancouver. And then about a year later, a year or so, I guess, he moved over to Portland and bought property. He was a great believer in buying. He didn't believe in renting. He didn't believe in credit. And so he built a home out in Metzger. And he told me he bought it board by board, what he could afford to pay for, because he didn't want to be in debt. And it still stands.
It does?
Yes.
The house?
Yes, people living in it.
Amazing.
Yes. And so I went to school out at Metzger until the 7th grade, and then we moved into Portland. So I've been in the area all my life, and watched all the changes, some good, some not.
Did you do vaudeville acts here in Portland?
Oh yes, after I worked at the, what is the name, the Keegan's Theater over in Vancouver?
I don't know.
Yes, well, it's still there too. And they used to have, all the theaters had vaudeville. You had a main feature, and then you had the newsreel, and then you had vaudeville, and then they would show the main movie again. So this was what it was. And that made it really nice, because the people that came got a variety of everything, you know. Of course, no television, so that's the way they got their news. and that was nice. That was really nice. And, they say there's no business like show business, and that is very true because the people are different. They're more family oriented. And I don't care where you go, if you don't know anybody, whoever is on the show, they're your family. And that's the way they treat you. So...
and was that true whether it was black or white?
Yes, it
performers?
doesn't make any difference.
There was no color line.
No, because
in show business.
see, in show business, they judge you by your ability to do and your talent, not the color of your skin or how much education you have or whatever. And so that's why one reason I avoided a lot of prejudice, because I wasn't in that element. And I guess really I was a teenager before I recognized it. Was after we moved to Portland, and I recognized it. And they still had the signs up, we cater to white trade only, and the fountains that you could not drink out of. And that was right here in Portland. Yeah. And same thing with the restrooms. And so I experienced that. But
did you start performing as a teenager in some of the clubs?
Well, no, I wasn't allowed to work in the clubs because I wasn't old enough. But I always took part in music in school, and after I became a teenager, I started to study with Madame Sterna, who had studied with Madame Schumann-Heint. And I wanted to be an operatic singer. And at that time, I had a coloratura soprano voice. And when I graduated from high school, which was Commerce at the time, it's now Cleveland, I got a scholarship from Juilliard. But I couldn't take it because I couldn't afford to go, keep my upkeep, I had the scholarship, but then you have to have a place to sleep and
you had to
eat.
live there.
Yeah, you have to live. And so I wasn't able to take that. And so anyway, I continued to work anyway. And then I went to the University of Oregon, and when I came away from there, I got married, and I married a man that had this gorgeous baritone voice. And as a matter of fact, he became, how I met him, he became one of my students. I used to teach voice in the old Taylor building. And we did duets together, a lot of Naughty Marietta stuff, that sort of thing. And so when he died, he got killed in an automobile accident. Here I was left with this coloratura soprano voice and no partner.
Oh, how long were you married?
Oh, we were married about 6 years.
Before he was...
Yeah. And then, so here I am left with this real high voice. Well, you know yourself, after a couple of martinis, nobody wants to hear you. Really.
Why do you say that?
Because your voice is too high, and when you get a little alcohol in you, those high notes don't sound too good to the customer, And not me full of alcohol, but them, So then I took 3 years off to bring my voice down to a contralto. And in the meantime, I worked as a comedy stripper with the red long johns, and the little flap in the back, and on the flap it said exotic dancer.
So when you say comedy stripper, you weren't really stripping. I mean, I was stripped down to
the red flannels, and that broke the team up. And I wore some balloons, and because at that time I wasn't developed too well, and so then at the end of the act I would just take a pin and break the balloons, And everybody thought that was funny.
Now, where were you doing this at?
That right here in Portland.
At what kind of, in the theaters? Was this still
No,
vaudeville, or was this club?
this was in clubs and private parties, you know,
Okay.
and especially bachelor parties. They like to have me at the bachelor parties.
Now, what were the clubs? What were the first clubs that you remember here in Portland?
First club that I worked in, I guess, was for Tom Johnson, who was a black man, and he had a club on 16th and Northwest Savior,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked there for quite a while.
Remember the name of the club?
Tom Johnson's.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. And he had everybody that worked there was black, and he had good cooks and good bartenders, and that's when Portland was wide open. You know, they had a red light district and the whole 9 yards, and so a lot of those people would come out to the club, and actually they spent good money, you know. And the show was good because he always had comedians and dancers, and I never remember him having any strippers, but he had dancers, like tap dancers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one girl, she was an exotic dancer, but she didn't take her clothes off. And so, because at that time the prohibition hadn't been lifted here in Oregon,
Uh-huh.
and you weren't supposed to have liquor.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And was the clientele mixed? Black and
No.
white?
No. All white.
All white.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And what was the music like?
Jazz.
It was...
Yeah. It's all jazz.
Yeah.
And we had one little drummer. He was so sweet. At that time, he was in his 60s. But he could play those drums. Oh, my goodness. And then he had kids that danced, and they were on the show. And it was really nice. And he would hire people that were just coming through, you know, trying to make it. We say in the business that when you're on the road, you try to break your fall. Now, like if I'm going from here to San Francisco, I would try to get a job in between, so I'm not deadheading into San Francisco.
Right. Yeah.
So that was nice, and I worked a lot of club dates, like for the VFW clubs,
Mm-hmm.
things like that, around in these small towns. And I remember one time when you were speaking about prejudice, I took the band and we went to Longview, Washington. So the fellows in the band got there before I did, and so the people in the club were scurrying around trying to find a place for the band to stay. So they finally found a place for them to stay, way across the railroad track somewhere. And so the man that was managing the place, he says, "I haven't found a place for you yet, Mary." And I said, "Oh, that's all right. I'll find something myself." So I got in my car and I drove down to the Monticello Hotel, which is, if you've ever been to Longview, it's a beautiful structure and the biggest place in town. I walked up to the counter and I said, "I'd like to have a room with bath, please." And he said, "Well, how long are you going to stay?" And I told him, I said, "I'm working at VFW Club and I'll be here for 2 weeks." All right, and he gave me a room. Well, when I went back, and the manager said to me, "Have you found a place yet?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Where?" I said, "At the Monticello." Well, he was, you know, his mouth didn't drop open, but his jaw did. He was so surprised, you know. So, but that has been my experience. If you don't go in with a negative thought, you're not going to get negative results 9 times out of 10.
That's a good approach.
Yes, you know, and that's the way I've just lived all my life. You know, you'll have to ask me to leave because I'm certainly going. If I want something that you have in a business, I'm going in and find out about it. And that's the way I've always been.
Now, when you were playing at Longview, for example, this was after you had lowered your voice
Yes.
to a contralto.
Yeah.
Could you pick up that story a little bit? You must have been in your mid-20s by then, late 20s?
Yes, in my mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And well, I have a child to support, so you know.
From
I
your
have-
marriage?
Yes, I have.
Oh, you didn't mention you had a child.
Yes, my first child, and so I have to work. You know. And of course, it was. That's what I say about people ask me, how do you manage to live so long? But you see, I've always worked at something that I love to do. So I haven't been under stress, work stress, like a lot of people. They have a good job, but they hate it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's stress. That'll kill you quick.
Yeah. That's,
You know, but I've always done something that I like to do, and so
so in those years, were you singing jazz?
Yes,
From
oh, yeah.
the time that you lowered your voice, you became a jazz
yeah.
singer?
Mhm. And so, well, I was a jazz singer when I was a child. I was singing jazz. But like I say, I wanted to be an opera star. And of course, that time, my idol was Marian Anderson. You know, and it was hard. It was hard for her. You know, and she had a struggle. I mean, staying places and what have you. You know, and so it's just something that you had to not dwell on, but overcome.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm quite sure that everyone in life has their stumbling blocks, but you have to learn to step over them and continue to go on. So that's what life is all about, really.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about Portland in the years, let's say, the 30s. For example, what part of the city did you live in?
I lived in Montebello.
Which is the southeast?
No, that's northeast, near 82nd, between Halsey and Gleason, as it's really called.
Uh-huh.
Everybody says Gleason, but Mrs. Flanders, I met her one day and she informed me it was Gleason.
Oh, well,
Yes.
that's the first I know about this.
Mm-hmm, that's the real pronunciation. But nevertheless, yes, that's the area there. And from about 60th to 82nd.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I was talking to Paul Knowles about the community that was around Russell and Vancouver and the commercial district there and the clubs there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you relate to that district and did you sing in those clubs down there?
I worked for Tanaka, Johnny Tanaka at Little Sandy's. I worked there. I worked at that particular cotton club once.
Now, Little Sandy's was where?
Little Sandy's was on Williams and Victoria.
And Victoria. Uh-huh.
Mm.
And then...
No, not Victoria. Weidler, because Weidler comes before Victoria. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So
Williams and Weidler.
Williams and Weidler.
Yeah.
And then there wasn't there another club called McCleary's? Or
No, McClendon's.
McClendon's?
McClendon's.
Yeah.
That was on Victoria, upstairs. On Williams and Victoria.
Or what kind of a club was that?
It was a jazz club.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And Bill McClendon owned it. He later on went to teach at Portland State. And he was a musician himself.
Uh-huh.
So I worked there too. Worked there.
And then the Cotton Club, do you remember the original Cotton Club?
Yeah, the original Cotton Club was in the Golden West Hotel down on Northwest Broadway and Everett. It's still there. The building is still there.